I stand before you today with a heart filled with admiration and a mind stirred by the powerful words we heard from India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, at the General Assembly. His speech was not merely a diplomatic address, it was a clarion call for justice, a mirror held up to the failures of the current world order, and most importantly, a roadmap for how nations of the global South can reclaim their rightful place in international affairs. When Minister Jaishankar began his address with Namaskar from the people of Bharat, he immediately established something profound: the assertion of authentic identity over colonial nomenclature. This simple gesture resonates deeply with those of us in Africa who understand the power of names, of identity, of refusing to be defined by others. Bharat, not India. A civilization asserting its true self. This is the kind of confidence we need across the global South. His assessment of the United Nations was brutally honest, and I appreciate this honesty above all diplomatic niceties. An objective report card will show that the UN is in a state of crisis. He declared, "How refreshing to hear a major power acknowledge what we smaller nations have known for decades, that this institution, supposedly created for all humanity, has become a tool for maintaining the dominance of a select few." When he spoke of the two significant conflicts, Ukraine and the Middle East, and noted that innumerable other hotspots don't even make the news, I felt a surge of recognition. How many conflicts have we witnessed in Africa that barely register in international consciousness? How many of our peoples have suffered while the world's attention was focused elsewhere? Jaishankar's words validated our experience of being marginalized in global discourse. But what struck me most powerfully was his courage in addressing terrorism with such directness. When he spoke of India having a neighbor that is an epicenter of global terrorism, he demonstrated the kind of forthright diplomacy that we in Africa desperately need. For too long, we have been expected to speak in euphemisms, to dance around difficult truths for the sake of diplomatic courtesy. Jaishankar showed us that it is possible to be both diplomatic and truthful, respectful yet uncompromising on matters of principle. His words about terrorism resonated deeply with those of us confronting similar challenges. Countering terrorism is a particular priority because it synthesizes bigotry, violence, intolerance, and fear. This is precisely what we face in the Sahel, what many African nations confront daily. When he called for relentless pressure on the entire terrorism ecosystem, he articulated what we have long needed to hear from a major power: that terrorism cannot be fought with half measures or political calculations. The minister's critique of the pandemic response was equally compelling. We saw open discrimination in access to vaccines and travel. His words touched a raw nerve for many of us who witnessed firsthand how Africa was treated during COVID-19, how we were denied equal access to vaccines, how our populations were used as testing grounds for treatments, how travel bans were imposed on us while similar measures were not applied to Western nations facing comparable outbreaks. When Jaishankar spoke of sanctimonious lectures delivered to resource-starved nations after they were left to scramble to survive, he captured the essence of neo-colonial attitudes that persist in international relations. How many times have we been lectured about governance while being denied the resources to govern effectively? How often have we been criticized for our responses to crises we did not create, but were forced to manage with inadequate support? His analysis of economic challenges, technology control, supply chain manipulation, and connectivity restrictions revealed a sophisticated understanding of modern forms of domination. This is not the crude colonialism of the past, but a subtle systemic control that is perhaps even more effective. When he noted that each challenge makes a compelling case for more international cooperation, not less, while observing that we are moving in the opposite direction, he highlighted one of the great paradoxes of our time. But what I found most inspiring was not just his critique, but his articulation of an alternative vision. When he spoke of India's three guiding principles, Atmanirbhar, Atmaraksha, and Atmavishwas, he was outlining a philosophy that every nation of the global South should embrace. Self-reliance at Manurbar is not isolationism but intelligent interdependence. It means building our own capabilities, nurturing our own talents, and refusing to be perpetually dependent on others for our basic needs. In Africa, we have vast resources, brilliant minds, and rich cultures. Yet we continue to export raw materials and import finished goods, to send our best students abroad and wonder why they do not return, to rely on external validation for our internal worth. Self-defense at Maraksha goes beyond military might. It encompasses the defense of our interests, our values, our sovereignty in all its dimensions. For us in Africa, this means defending our right to choose our own partners, to exploit our own resources for our own benefit, to govern ourselves according to our own values and traditions rather than imposed models. Self-confidence, Atmavishwas, is perhaps the most crucial element. As Jaishankar noted, India approaches the world as the most populous nation, as a civilizational state, and as a rapidly growing major economy. Africa too must recognize what it is. The continent with the youngest population, the repository of humanity's oldest civilizations, the source of resources that power the modern world. We must approach international relations with the confidence that comes from knowing our worth. The minister's account of India's practical contributions to global development was particularly impressive. 600 major development projects across 78 countries. This is South-South cooperation at its finest. This is how we build a different kind of world order, not through domination, but through mutual support, not through exploitation, but through shared development. When he spoke of India as a first responder during crisis, providing finance, food, fertilizer, and fuel to neighbors in need, he was describing the kind of solidarity that should characterize relationships among global South nations. Too often we have looked to the North for assistance while ignoring the capabilities and resources available among ourselves. His mention of Indian peacekeepers serving in multiple African nations, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Western Sahara, Central African Republic, South Sudan, and Somalia, reminded us that India has been a genuine partner to Africa, contributing to our peace and stability without seeking to dominate or exploit us in return. The minister's call for UN Security Council reform, particularly his emphasis on addressing the historical injustice done to Africa, was music to our ears. For too long, Africa has been treated as an object of international relations rather than a subject. We are the continent most affected by Security Council decisions, yet we have no permanent representation. We are home to over 1 billion people, yet our voices are marginalized in global governance. When Jaishankar declared that a reformed council must be truly representative and that India stands ready to assume greater responsibilities, he was not just advocating for India's permanent membership. He was advocating for a fundamental restructuring of global power. India's inclusion would represent the Global South's voice in ways that current permanent members simply cannot. His vision for artificial intelligence was equally forward-looking. Rather than seeing AI as a threat or a tool for domination, he presented it as an opportunity for development, with inclusion and impact as guiding principles. This is the kind of leadership we need. Not fear, mongering about technology, but thoughtful consideration of how new tools can serve human development. What impressed me most about the speech was its balanced criticism coupled with solutions, problems identified alongside paths forward. This is mature leadership. Too often, speeches at international forums are either purely critical or naively optimistic. Jaishankar managed to be both honest about current failures and hopeful about future possibilities. His conclusion was particularly powerful. Islands of prosperity cannot flourish in an ocean of turbulence. This metaphor captures perfectly why the Global South must work together, why our destinies are intertwined, why India's success should inspire rather than intimidate other developing nations. When he spoke of reformed multilateralism as the obvious way forward, he was articulating what many of us have long believed, that the answer to failed multilateralism is not nationalism or isolationism, but better multilateralism, more inclusive multilateralism, multilateralism that serves all humanity rather than just the privileged few. The minister's speech represents a new kind of diplomacy for a new era. It is diplomacy that refuses to be defensive or apologetic, that asserts rights while acknowledging responsibilities, that critiques the present while building the future. This is the kind of diplomatic leadership the Global South has long needed and rarely received. For those of us in Africa, Jaishankar's speech offers both inspiration and instruction. It shows us that it is possible to be proud of our heritage and committed to progress, critical of injustice and constructive in our responses, nationalist in our confidence, and internationalist in our cooperation. The speech also demonstrates the importance of civilizational confidence. When Jaishankar spoke of Bharat as a civilizational state, he was asserting something that we in Africa must also embrace, that our worth is not measured solely by our current economic indicators or military capabilities, but by our deep histories, our rich cultures, and our contributions to human civilization. Africa, too, is a civilizational continent. We are the birthplace of humanity, the cradle of philosophy, the source of mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and countless other fields of knowledge. We have contributed to world civilization for millennia and continue to contribute today. We must approach international relations with this confidence, this knowledge of our own worth. The minister's emphasis on the Global South was not mere rhetoric. It was recognition of a fundamental shift in world politics. The old categories of First World and Third World are breaking down. What matters now is not whether you are aligned with East or West, but whether you are committed to justice, development, and mutual respect. In this new configuration, India and Africa are natural partners. We share histories of colonialism and struggles for independence. We face similar challenges of development and modernization. We both seek to maintain our sovereignty while engaging constructively with the world. We both understand that our strength lies not in isolation, but in solidarity with like-minded nations. Jaishankar's speech was also notable for what it did not do. It did not engage in the kind of great power competition rhetoric that dominates much of international discourse today. It did not position India as seeking to replace one hegemon with another. Instead, it presented India as working to create a more equitable, more just, more representative international order, one in which all nations can thrive. This is exactly the kind of leadership the world needs right now. Not leadership that seeks domination, but leadership that seeks elevation. Elevation of oneself and elevation of others. Not leadership that hoards opportunity, but leadership that creates opportunity for all. As I listened to Minister Jaishankar, I was reminded of the great Pan-Africanist leader's words, "We face neither east nor west, we face forward." This is precisely the spirit that Jaishankar embodied, not looking backward to old divisions, not being trapped by others' categories, but looking forward to new possibilities, new partnerships, new forms of cooperation. The speech also highlighted the importance of practical action alongside principled positions. India's 600 development projects, its role as a first responder during crisis, its peacekeeping contributions. These are not just talking points, but concrete demonstrations of commitment to global development and stability. This combination of principle and practice is what makes India's leadership credible. It is one thing to speak about South-South cooperation. It is another thing to actually practice it at scale. India has shown that it is possible for a developing nation to be both recipient of development assistance and provider of it, both learner and teacher, both beneficiary and contributor. For Africa, this example is particularly relevant. We must move beyond seeing ourselves purely as recipients of aid or sources of raw materials. We must become active agents in global development, contributing our resources, knowledge, and capabilities to the common good while ensuring that we benefit equitably from global growth and progress. Minister Jaishankar's speech has given us a roadmap for this transformation. It has shown us how to be confident without being arrogant, how to be critical without being destructive, how to be proud of our heritage while being committed to progress. Most importantly, it has shown us that change is possible. The current international order is not permanent, not inevitable, not unchangeable. With vision, courage, and solidarity among like-minded nations, we can create a more just, more equitable, more representative global system. The ninth decade of the United Nations, as Jaishankar noted, must indeed be one of leadership and hope. But this leadership will not come from the same powers that have dominated previous decades. It will come from nations like India, which have the vision to see beyond current limitations, the courage to challenge existing injustices, and the commitment to build something better. Africa must be part of this leadership. We cannot remain passive observers of global transformation. We must be active participants, bringing our own vision, our own courage, and our own commitment to the task of building a better world order. In closing, I want to say that Minister Jaishankar's speech was more than a diplomatic address. It was a call to action, an invitation to partnership, a vision of possibility. It showed us that another world is possible, that the current order is not the final word, that nations of the global south can shape their own destiny and contribute to global progress. We must answer this call. We must accept this invitation. We must embrace this vision. The future of our peoples, the future of our continent, the future of global justice depends on our response. Thank you, Minister Jaishankar, for showing us the way forward. Thank you for your honesty, your vision, your leadership. And thank you for reminding us that in unity, in solidarity, in shared commitment to justice, we can build the world that our peoples deserve. The time for change is now. The leadership for change is here. Let us move forward together.